Hi, I'm Brian Schrader, and you're listening to Outstanding in Your Field, powered by Pioneer Agronomy. I'm here with my co-hosts, agronomist Carl Joern and Crystal Williams.
Think of us as IT for your crops. If we know how to fix your issues, we'll tell you. And if not, we've probably got a workaround.
And if we don't, we'll find one because Mother Nature isn't like an on-off switch.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Outstanding in Your Field podcast. I'm pleased to be joined by my colleague, Michael Wardyn. Mike, tell me, and the listeners, what do things look like out in Nebraska? You reside in Grand Island, cover west from there. Put it on the map for folks and tell me the story of 2026.
2026, it kind of started a lot like 2025 out here. It had been so dry in the spring. We had such a dry spring in 25, and everybody's going like, gosh, we can't do that again. And we did it again. It started out through the winter, hardly any snow. If you are a skier and you're listening to the snowpack in the Rockies, ski resorts had minimal snow, minimal days to actually open. In this part of the world, we depend a lot on the snow melt out of the Rockies for our surface irrigation and our water recharge for that matter. So, it was pretty dry. I mean, even the winter wheat came through winter and people knew in January, February that it wasn't going to make it. It was just desiccating in the fields and getting shorter. And even though it's going to make some grain on some of the wheat acres, it's so short that combines can't get underneath it.
We were dealing with the drought monitor more or less since last spring, and it was all through the winter. Same deal. We didn't get a whole lot of snow, not as reliant as you all are, obviously, Mike, but all of a sudden we found ourselves, the month of April, we started to catch a good amount of rain. And now our prayers were answered, and in a gratuitous manner. We've got too much rain. We've had 10 inches in 10 days in a lot of spots. And we've got, by the time this podcast comes out, we're staring down another 2-inch rain that a lot of guys are saying it's make or break or give me hail to come with it. I remember from my time being out west working with you, it wasn't all that uncommon where guys would have, dry land crop burning up and would maybe be praying for hail to, put us out of our misery. Are you all at that point in terms of dryness that folks are throwing in the towel on the dry land crop already, or what are sentiments out your way? We're too wet and we're not happy. Are you too dry and not happy?
During planting time, the ground is very hard. I mean, the irrigated, we could plant into that because we pre-watered a lot of the fields, but the dry land was incredibly hard. So a lot of these fields, they couldn't get any planting depth. I mean, some of that stuff was going in an inch and a half. The ground was so hard. You had so much down pressure on planters. You were actually tearing them apart, trying to get them to go into the ground on the no-till. And it was tough. So emergence was variable. I mean, we had air pockets, we had clods that the coleoptile was rupturing a little bit below the surface and trying to push the leaves out through cracks. So the stands are variable at best. And then we just had enough rain on a lot of locations. I'm talking central Nebraska to get the dry land going. And then it's alive right now. We are going to need more rains coming and keep it going. But, a lot of the dry land looks really good now. It evened up. We've had some nice inch rains that got on it. Way out west, not that story, but central Nebraska, the dry land crops don't look that bad. Irrigated, we've got decent stands. I'm not going to say great stands. There's just so much residue from last year. So much residue. I mean, with a dry winter, you know how that is, Carl. The stalks don't break down. You're walking in these fields, it's like they got harvested yesterday. A lot of integrity of those stalks you have from last year. Wind blows the residue over the top of the strip till, buries the corn that's trying to come out. We're dealing with a lot of residue this year. And frankly, a lot of guys are saying, next year, if this happens, I am going to till more than I ever have. And I don't blame them in some locations because it made a difference to till that residue under.
What Mike, you serve in the product agronomist role, so you get to look at kind of a lot of our late stage research handoff products before it gets to folks like me. As you're assessing strip uniformity, the stands and impact where, let's say that you were planning into those really tough conditions. We're trying to do the exact same thing that folks are experiencing on the farm. So their Pioneer products or we know how they're going to work when they get out in the wild. How would you characterize your lineup out west today? Is it built to be able to handle some of those variable stands where you got a little bit more ear flex than maybe what the rest of the marketplace has? What's it look like out your direction?
Yeah, the stands, a typical impact may have 200 hybrids or 250 hybrids in it. So you get a lot of looks. So we got our current lineup, we got competitive, and we've got all our experimentals, R4, R5 stages and stuff. There's a variance and sometimes we knock hybrids because they're not the biggest hybrid in there, but I look at them at their uniformity too. Certain hybrids like our new P11056 comes out of the ground very uniform, very well. Some guys say it's not the biggest hybrid in there, but I love the uniformity of it. The plant height is just all right there. We have other hybrids that are, we're getting great emergence notes this year because there was emergence stress and it had a tough time. In May 3rd, 4th, 5th, we had 30-some degree nights that really put some stress on hybrids that got planted. Sure. The last part of April. And we're getting good notes. When I'm walking plots and I'm looking, and I'm not sure if it's the seed treatment, it's the background of genetics, but when I look at our genetics versus the competitive stuff, I can visually see a competitor coming up. It's smaller. It might be fairly uniform, but it's small, very small. And I don't know if you notice that too, but kudos to the Pioneer team as far as breeding in great stress emergence to maybe it's better seed treatments. I don't know what, but the last 2 years I've seen our genetics, our hybrids are coming out of the ground better than what competitive stuff is.
I'm sure there's a number of departments within Pioneer that like to take credit for it, Mike. Like you said, is it the germplasm today that the breeders have sculpted into that mold? Is it the seed treatment, folks that have given us good vigor? Is it, even despite these adverse planting conditions, is it, are we taking better advantage of getting the seed right in the furrow the way that we need it to be? And, all the plants are taken off, whatever it is, management on the farm, that intersection of genetics and management, it seems like it's paying dividends in the early goings. We're seeing the same thing here. It's not uncommon, and it's kind of, you nerd out a little bit as an agronomist and you take a picture and it's, you're half a leaf stage ahead of the same seed planted on the same day, just different side of the planter in somebody else's bag. And you think, is it just me being an agronomist getting excited? But all those things add up to you'd rather be ahead than behind. And it's a matter of how long can you sustain that advantage. And so far we've been able to see it, season long. So it'll be kind of exciting to see where things take us.
Yeah, no doubt. The corn in this area kind of gone through the ugly duckling stage where the nodal roots have there or not there yet, and then they finally just all are there and they're feeding heavy and the corn becomes wide-leaved and lush. That's the stage we're in right now. We've got some really good looking irrigated fields that are starting to cover the pivot tires or getting close to it.
Well, Mike, we're similar stage here. You've got growing point that's coming up above the ground, and thank heavens because I've got a good number of acres that are sitting underwater for going on, day 10. It'll probably be nearly 2 weeks here by the time the podcast, reaches many folks' ears. And thank goodness that you've got bigger corn. The smaller the corn is, the less of a snorkel it has to be able to endure those types of conditions. No different than, if you're going through really droughty conditions, like you said, in a dryland no-till piece, all of a sudden, the bigger the corn is, the more nodal roots you have, the more soil you can explore, the longer you can hang on. So it comes back to this idea of, when you can get it in and it's timely, get planted. That's what we say here in the East. For you all, you can kind of pick your calendar date if you got to pre-water it anymore. There's no difference of planting it on April 10th versus May 10th if you're not getting rained out. It's just a matter of when do you actually want to get going, get the crop started.
Yeah, a lot of the field agronomists will do a survey of all their plots and try to pick out what was the best week of this spring to plant your corn. And they'll do it in the fall when the plants all come out. And they're thinking mid-April this year. We had a lot of heat mid-April, and that probably was the best time to plant corn here. The worst time was right before that, really 35, 33, even colder temps the first part of May. So if you planted last week of April, corn had to stress a little bit to get through that cold on that and stuff. But yeah, it's always a different year, and nothing stays the same. You got to be agile and flexible.
Absolutely. Mike, we just had here over the weekend, we had tar spot identified in Indiana here again already. I know it's a disease we contend with more in a more humid climate, just like you all. In a more arid climate, it's Goss's wilt, bacterial leaf streak. We share northern and gray, but we've got a different mix of diseases. Tell me, how have you all been faring over the last year or two with respect to foliar disease management?
The last couple of years or this year so far?
Yeah. Last couple of years. I'm guessing you're clean
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah,
You're clean right now.
We're clean right now, and although our area goes from 15 inches of annual rainfall in the west to 25 in the east or more, so Nebraska's a wide state. But when it comes to disease in the center part of the thing, we do contend a lot with bacterial leaf streak, and it's already starting to show up here on that. Last year was the first year we've really gotten quite a bit of tar spot.
Okay.
But the tar spot seems to be traveling right along the northern part of Nebraska as it goes across there.
Yeah.
The cooler, maybe they had more moisture and everything. And then, of course, along the Missouri River next to Iowa, there's tar spot there too. But there's more there than I was completely floored. Some of the fields I walked into and I go, oh my gosh, there is tar spot everywhere here. Last year it was there. And if it's there last year, it's there to stay, I imagine. Goss's wilt is a variable thing. I always say in a wet year, we're going to contend with disease. In a dry year, we're going to contend with insects.
Sure.
Goss's wilt is one of those that is pretty opportunistic. We get strong winds that rip the leaves up early, sand blasting from the wind blowing to hail storms, a little bit of stress on the corn, and vulnerable hybrids. And we'll have Goss's wilt in there. A lot of our hybrids, if Goss's wilt shows up, it seems like it shows up a little bit early and then it doesn't progress at all. We've got a pretty good defense built in all our hybrids, and we're very adamant about testing everything we launch out here that it's going to have Goss's wilt. That Goss's wilt and brittle snap is two things we watch, and we've got a very good strong lineup against that. So
that's that's one thing. It may be a little bit inside baseball for the listeners, but as Mike looks at his selection criteria for products and as the breeding team is building those for him, it's very different selection criteria than folks in Ohio and in Indiana. You're somewhere in that transition zone, especially where I work. And for those Illinois listeners, you get into some variable soils as you get back closer to the lake, where you got really sandy ground that doesn't have much in the way of yield potential. Drought is going to be your biggest, restrictor when it comes to reaching your yield potential. We'll borrow from Western genetics that Mike's team is working with. Any more brittle, stock integrity, stock strength, willowing resistance. These are things that we're mindful of kind of in the northern corridor of where I work, where we can get some of those bigger wind systems. They don't always peter out by the time they leave Mike's state and charge across the corn belt. So that's another one. And then, like you said, the spectrum of diseases, it's a different animal, what you all contend with versus what we do. But one thing we do share in common that you'd mentioned, insect pressure in drier years. Western bean cutworm last year, a banner year in Northwest Indiana and Northeast Illinois. Worst ear feeding pest year that we've had probably in a decade. Tell me, Mike, you're right there in the Platte River Valley. You guys always have moth trap counts off the charts. How are you faring when it comes to managing for Western bean cutworm and corn earworm?
It's been very good that the team we put together as far as the monitoring with the moth traps is second to none. when it comes to that. The field agronomists get it out to the reps put it out in their customers' fields and their own fields. And we monitor those as far as the moth counts and where the peak moth count is. It's usually a sprayed application. What's kind of amazing about Western bean is we can have really high moth counts and we don't get a lot of damage sometimes.
Sure.
And sometimes you can't find them egg masses on there on the leaves. And then you start peeling back ears. You're going like, oh my gosh, where'd these Western bean come from? They're chewing on the ear tips.
Yep.
They're kind of an elusive insect, and crop consultants just hate looking for them because you're looking for this little spot of eggs on the corn canopy, and you got to look over. You miss one, and you got damage in there. So a lot of them pull the trigger and just say, I'm going to put a fungicide on. I'm going to throw some insecticide in. And take care of them. They're probably here, especially if the moth traps are catching moths. They're flying and laying eggs somewhere. So,
yep. I think that trapping network that you all utilize, and we tried to do the junior version, the discount version here, just because we have less acres with exposure to it. But yeah, it gives you an idea when you understand the peak of when those moths are flying about. Then when they're mating, when the eggs are getting deposited, and that gives you an indicator. Is it the end of June? Is it mid-July? When should we be making that application? That gives you a sense. And like you said, the timing of the fungicide and the timing of the insecticide, they might not always marry up for what's optimal, and that's what makes it tough. But that's where it's good to partner with somebody locally that knows what's cooking. So, Mike, if we don't visit here before harvest, it's too early to tell what this crop is going to make. But as you've got listeners here in Indiana and Illinois that have a crop underwater, too much that they're dealing with in the way of moisture, let's use your expertise. You've got plenty of center pivot irrigation. We're coming into the last month of grain fill. Let's assume we pulled out of this thing and we want to finish out the crop in a good way. How do you encourage Nebraska producers to stick with it when it comes to irrigating their crop? When should they cut things off? And if you're really swinging for 250, 300 bushel corn like you guys are under a pivot, how do we make that final pass decision? How do you coach folks through that?
Well, it's just looking at the potential. A lot of them, especially a lot of the guys who are in the NCGA, they are looking for the yield contest. They're looking for population. Do we have enough stand in here? Is the population good? If the population is not optimal, what I planted at 36,000 or 37,000 or whatever, is this hybrid capable of flexing and flexing and make it up for the year, like a hybrid, like a 14830 big air flex, but yeah, and couple that with the fact that we use a lot of corn in Nebraska. I mean, you're looking at the panhandle of Nebraska, and I'm talking way out towards Colorado, Wyoming.
Yep.
A lot of those acres did not get planted to corn this year. We just didn't have the snow melt. They said they came in and said, we don't have canal water for you. I'm sorry. And they had to do prevent plant, and they planted some kind of sorghum on there for their cattle. So we're in a corn deficit in some areas. We are in a corn deficit. We need corn. So grow corn, grow as many bushels as you can. And we need it to feed the cattle, feed the ethanol plants and things like that on there. So as far as making that last pass and everything, we've gotten better about coaching where hybrids are at in their life cycle, as far as it's got this many days left of GDUs to hit physiological maturity, and making sure these late filling hybrids, we take advantage of that late fill because that's where the big yield comes from. And some hybrids are done early. So just coaching them on the type of hybrids they are.
What I'm taking from that, Mike, is that we're aiming for black layer. You don't want the tank to run empty before you cross the finish line, right? You got to make sure that soil profile's got enough moisture to see it through. Okay. Good stuff. Well, Mike Wardyn, product agronomist for the state of Nebraska, traveling west from Grand Island. Mike, anything you want to leave folks in the Eastern Corn Belt with as we envy you for having a dry spring when we have too wet of a spring? Nobody can be content. What do you want to leave folks with today?
I just want to say, could you just send us a couple inches that rain? We'll gladly take it. But I don't know what we could send you back, but there's some guys that are just on the border of we got enough water, and we timely rains would make all the difference in the world on that. Um, Come July, guys will run pivots because sometimes rains bring hail, and if you got that far into it, we might as well just water on that aspect of it if you got the water.
Sure.
But yeah, it's always a challenge. I think our farmers are really good managers and managing high water, a lot of water like you have or what we have out west. They're agile and they've seen it before. So
Absolutely. Okay. Mike, where can folks follow along with your work? I know that you've got
Hey.
a more active than the average agronomist social media presence. Always enjoy the content you put out. How can folks follow along when they want to know what's happening in the state of Nebraska?
yeah, we have a podcast out in Nebraska called Kickin' Dirt. So it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts and everything. So Kickin' Dirt is out there. Me and the two Kevins are in different parts of the state and we talk about what's going on out here. So we enjoy that. And also, Twitter feeds, always putting out stuff on Twitter. So
Awesome. Okay, Mike. Hey, good catching up. Thanks for spending a little bit of time with us in the East, and we'll have to do it again soon.
all right. Thank you, Carl.
This has been another episode of Outstanding in Your Field. Like and follow our podcast wherever you are listening. We've got a new episode at least once a month. You can also find us on YouTube by following Pioneer Seeds.
And I'm Carl Joern. You can follow along with me at CJoern on X or on Facebook at CJoern Agronomy. That's CJOERN.
That concludes this Pioneer Agronomy video podcast. Visit our page on pioneer.com and follow us on Twitter and Facebook for more agronomy insights.